right, Dre, the future is now, and it's time to talk about the UPSL Georgia Premier Division fall season. It's kicking off this weekend. We got some big changes this season. First off, before we get too far, for the spring season, we're still in the process of doing the 2024 Fans Favorite Goal Contest. That ends on Friday. Just want to give you a chance to let everybody know about the contest.
Yeah, it's something that we started last season. It's a way to really have a little bit of a competition, a little friendly competition to see from the fans to see who is the best as far as the top goal, whether it's just your favorite goal or you think it's the best goal of the season. We went through well over 100 goals to pick out 20 candidates, and if you go to upsl-georgia.com and look for the article on the front page there. You can actually see the video that shows all the goals, and you also have an opportunity to vote on it. Now, the deadline for the voting is going to be Friday at midnight, this coming Friday night, actually, August the 30th. And the winner is going to get an ASMG plaque and sort of bragging rights. And so this is something we're going to do every season to get the fans involved. We're also looking at maybe getting a write-in in future contests. But it's just a way it's a little friendly competition, and it's a lot of fun.
So a couple more days, you get to pick out who's your favorite goal of the season. We got our own favorites, but we're not going to let that get in there.
Yeah, we have internal arguments and discussions on who we think are the best goals.
All right, so let's talk about the fall season. So when we talk about the fall season, the first thing we got to talk about is the relegation zone from the spring. So in the relegation zone, FC Atlanta and North Georgia United did fall into that relegation zone. However, with a few changes, they are going to get to survive one more season with the Premier Division.
And yeah, I was just going to say, this is something that, the fans and supporters out there can understand. At this level, every season there can be a realignment depending on what happens. And this happened this past season, as you'll get into. And so it's an opportunity sometimes for teams to move up that ordinarily wouldn't be able to move up, or to take time off. So go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but go ahead and kind of get into those details.
No, absolutely. You're right on, spot on. So luckily for North Georgia and FC Atlanta, two teams decided that they do not want to participate in the fall season this year. So Legends FC and Atlanta United Academy have decided that they are going to sit out this fall season. And a little bit of a update. This fall season, instead of 13 teams, we're going to have 14 teams in the Premier Division. So that opened up those spots.
Right. So that, and in the UPSL Georgia Premier, 14 teams is the absolute maximum you can have in a division. Any more than that, and we could be looking at dividing the Premier, much like Florida has done and Texas, into separate Premier divisions. But for right now, we have a 14 team division, 13 games in the season. Everybody plays everybody once. And just a little bit of background with the Atlanta United, and I think this might happen with a lot of MLS academies. They've restructured. So the team that they had in U19 does not exist anymore. And so that's the reason why they're not a part of the fall season. Now, there is an opportunity that they could come back at some point. It depends on Atlanta United themselves and who they might want to organized to put in the UPSL, but it's been a good ride with them. And, I'm looking forward to maybe seeing something like that happen in the future. Legends FC is a different story. They're in the process of reorganization, but they will return. We're not sure about their placement yet. It depends on, what happens in this fall season, and also what happens with their reorganization in the off season for them. So that'll be something that we're going to have to review at the end of this season.
Okay. And so Let's start with the 14 teams for this fall season, and we're going to do this alphabetically. First team that's going to come in is Albion SC, who was formerly Atlanta Fire. They got promoted from Division One. This will be their first season in the Premier Division.
Yeah, I mean, Albion SC that is sort of a rebranding, formerly Atlanta Fire South United, and they did very well in the Division One competition, but now they've taken that step up, and Albion SC is a nationwide type of academy, so there are other ones around the nation, the national affiliates, and so this is just one of those ones that's reorganizing as Albion. And so very well run, very organized with a lot of history. And it's hard to know because I didn't see a lot of them play in Division One, but the fact that they're able to be allowed promotion into the Premier tells you a lot already. And of course, the history that's there. So it'll be interesting to see how they adjust to the new competition coming up this fall.
And then we move on to the second team, that being Atlanta City FC with Coach Joao Johanning. Be interested to see what happened. The spring season did not, like we said in the last week's podcast, spring season did not go Coach Joao's way at all. We haven't really had a lot of conversation with him. He's been, head in the trenches, working hard. So he hasn't really given us an update on the roster and how the team is. We know that we just did the U13, 15, 17s Academy Regional Cup just a couple weeks ago. They were heavy in that, did decent. Still a lot of work to do. They got a lot of those young kids. We'll see if Thierry Jules is back, if Jimmy Noel is back, Arroyo, some of those guys, are they back? We don't know. Does he have the chance to get likes of Camus Jaden? He was in and out with the roster the last two seasons. Don't know what we're going to get from the Atlanta City team.
Yeah, I mean, this is just one of those ones that's almost like a soap opera, Larry. Atlanta City always had a soft, spot in my own heart for them because of the opportunity that Coach Johannan gives to the youth. I mean, he is very youth focused when it comes to the development of talent. He's a fantastic coach, but having said that, he's a one-man band, and so he doesn't have the variety of coaches needed, really, in my opinion, to get to the next level in the Premier. So I'm a little bit worried about his ability to really compete at the top level. And like you say, we don't know what's happening with Thierry Jules, with Jimmy Lee Noel. I know that Camus Jaden, he was actually removed from the roster last season for disciplinary issues within the club. Nothing with the league, but something within the club, undisclosed. You can only guess, but I don't know if he'll be back. And so that leaves a lot of the youth there, very talented youth. They played well last season, but it's men against boys in this case, and the talent level is only getting higher with the other teams. So, but again, this is something Coach Joao knows, and he's a smart guy. He's like I say, a good tactician, good coach. And so my guess is he will try to make those adjustments by getting in some experience, and hopefully that can make the difference and help them to compete in this fall season. But he's going to have to make changes over what happened last season to really to last and not get stuck down in that quagmire of the relegation race.
Yeah, when we talk about men, we talk about the next team. That is Dalton United, a team that has been at the top of the table for the last several seasons. And the team that I've said in the past when we've done these pregame or preseason little looked ats, I've always said until someone can beat Dalton United, they're at the top of the table for me. Coach Kiko always has a great squad up there. We'll see if some of the guys are getting a little bit older, and we'll see if he's got some new blood for this next season.
Yeah, it's interesting. We just talked about Atlanta City with the youth, with Dalton United. It's the other realm, the players that are getting a little bit long in the tooth, so to speak. but lots of experience, lots of talent there. But you know, are they getting in the new fresh legs and fresh players that are going to be needed and growing the squad that'll be needed for this fall season? But you know, they've always performed. They've always been competing. So Coach Kiko, like you say, seems to make the right moves, and I expect them to be challenging for the division title again. And
Yeah.
so, you know, it should be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, they're one of the teams that has a very, very full trophy cabinet because they've won a lot of trophies over the course of the last few seasons since they came from Division 1. They've been doing nothing but win. And then we move on to the next team, FC Atlanta. Like we said, a team that was in the relegation zone, but they were saved for one more season. It'll be interesting to see what FC Atlanta can do. Can they make up from some of those mistakes from the spring season? Maybe get a couple more players in and see if they can make a run on the playoffs and get into one of those top 8 spots.
Yeah, FC Atlanta. I think Coach Javier Ferrer has done a fantastic job there, but they missed the mark a little bit last season, and like you said, they ended up in the relegation zone. And if not for the realignment and for teams like Atlanta United and Legends dropping out, they would not be back in Premier this season. So they've got another. They've been given another chance, a lifeline here, to see what they can do to get going, but Coach Ferrer, he's, you know, again, a good coach. He's got a lot of talent to pick from, but is it going to be enough is the question. And so we'll have to wait and see.
And we move on to another team that's been going through some wholesale changes in the spring season. And you had a chance to talk to their owner a little bit later, that being FC Birmingham. You know, they changed the coach, changed some of the squad, and kind of were sitting there in the middle. Giancarlo Bustamante there on the top of the pitch. See, you had a chance to talk to Doug Walk, the owner over there at FC Birmingham, just kind of get some of his ideas of what to expect. They're going to play at a different location this season. Just a lot of changes there at FC Birmingham.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Doug Waugh, and he's one of the owners there, and it's been a chore, I think, keeping the team going at the level that they're going at. It's a large club, but you know, they had Coach Goldfarb for a few seasons there, and we're trying to make progress. Coach Goldfarb has now gone on. He's got other coaching duties and he's close to retirement. But their Division One coach, Gabriel Grigul, came in to be. He was appointed the Premier Division manager, and I think that there's been an adjustment period. You know, there's been some new players come in, like you say, but there's, you know, some of the old guard there, like Bustamante and a few others that are trying to reestablish their foundation, and it has not been easy. And so it'll, you know, again, this is one of those unknown question marks. It's a big club, it's a talented club, new coach, new philosophy. So it's unknown. It's unknown. How will they do? Will they gel? Will they bring in some you know, new talent that'll mix with the old talent that's there to make a run for the playoffs? It remains to be seen. But this is probably FC Birmingham's probably one of the bigger question marks for me. I can see them, you know, challenging for the playoffs, but I can also see them, if things don't go well, fighting it out to stay out of the relegation zone. You know, it's just it's wide open, I think.
And then a big question mark for me is going to be another team coming from Division 1, but a really, really interesting and exciting team, that being Fountain City FC, a team that the coach was the coach of the season for the spring. They had the Golden Boot for the Division 1. So a team that's coming down from that Columbus, Georgia area, and very exciting. They've ever since they've gotten into the UPSL, they've been a part, really interesting. Got a really big social gathering, a lot of attention down there in the lower west region of Georgia. They're always talking in the in our live broadcasts in the chat and everything. So I'm really just excited to see what Fountain City can bring to the Premier Division.
Yeah, Fountain City. Probably one of the most anticipated teams that I want to see personally in the new season coming up. I love the way Gage runs that club. Gage Joyner, he's one of the owners there, and they run it very professionally. What's particularly exciting about them that maybe is not evident in some clubs like Legends FC and UMA is, and they're from that same area too. They don't use a lot of college players, and so the team that did so well in Division One this last season, and again, realignment has allowed them to come up to Premier, and they are well deserving of that. I think that they can make more of a impact than many might expect as a promoted team, because these guys have been together for a very very long time. Their coach Sean Duvall won coach of the season last season there for good reason, and they just have a solid squad there. I mean, I don't know if Tristan Scheidel is going to. He's the Golden Boot winner from Division One from last season. I don't know his disposition for coming into the Premier Division, but he would be on a stage, on a proper stage for him if he is going to come back for the Premier Division season. So, um, you know, they have some stiff opposition, as we well know, but what they'll be able to do, I think that they might be able to make more, like I said before, make more of a splash than many might be anticipating.
And moving on to a team that I feel like they didn't meet their own expectations in the spring season, and that is Georgia Athletic SC. They came in from Division One, and you had a big hype for them. Coach Michelle, you had Nazario and Bamio on the top, scoring a lot of goals down there in the Division One. He had previously came from Atlanta Rovers. Their season was kind of hot and cold throughout the spring season, and I think that they gonna really kind of kick themselves. They feel like they didn't meet their expectations, and I expect them here in the fall to kind of have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder that they need to prove themselves here in the Premier Division.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we can be fooled a little bit because of the success of some of the teams that come out of Division One and then perform at the highest level, like Dalton United did when they came out, and they were gangbusters when they came in. UMA did really well when they came in, despite having to use so many youth players in their season when they came into the Premier Division. But Georgia Athletic was the same way. I mean, they dominated in Division One, had to come in and perform, and they've done reasonably well. So will they use that as a springboard to go on? I think they have every opportunity to do so. Do so. Coach Michele, again, has the experience now of one season in the Premier. He's gone through the gauntlet. He's seen what's up against his team. So it'll be interesting to see, how that turns out.
And another team that's kind of in the same boat is Georgia Revolution. I think they also came in. They came in from Division One last season. They also probably had really good expectations. Unfortunately, not a really good record down there at Warhawk Stadium. They were 3-0-3, so 3 wins, 3 losses. They didn't. They were just out of the playoffs in the spring. I think that it was kind of, they did have good success down in Division One back last fall, but maybe it was a little bit of humble pie that they had to eat that spring season, because you got to know that this Georgia division in the Premier Division is one of the toughest divisions in all of UPSL, and it is decided season after season by just minuscule points. 1 point here, 2 points there. So every single loss means massive in the Premier Division. And I think that's something that they down there at Georgia Revolution, I think they're going to have to strive to do better this next season.
Yeah, I think that you will see an improvement with them. They started out well last season, but it was the weak finish that did them in, and so that became an issue for them when it got to the end of the season, as they pushed on to the playoffs or attempt to get to the next level. But I think again, just like Georgia Athletic, they've had a season of experience now after stepping up from Division One, and they have a lot of promise. I mean, because again, a professionally run academy, large squad, something that they can really, um, uh, you know, rebound from last season and go on to a higher status for the fall season. So it'll be interesting to see if they can convert that. Now they did manage to just squeak into the playoffs last season, where they lost to Dalton United uh, pretty emphatically 5-0. But again, 1 year of experience, bring in some fresh legs, good coaching that they have. I think you'll see them kind of competing, if not for the division title, at least for a higher playoff spot.
And a team that we expect to be battling for that title as they do season after season is Kalanji Pro Profile. Coach Bruno was able to get his guys to the playoffs in win the Georgia Conference playoffs, represent Georgia in the Nationals, but then fell to what was the national champions, Soda City. So Coach Bruno, he did well with bringing in some new blood with Kalen Kalanji and Daniel Tomasi, like we talked about last week. You've talked to Coach Bruno. He's talked about wanting to bring in some more youth players from his academy system to go in there with the likes of Carr and Irving and Tachi back there in the back line with Playtez, also with Tiente and Joseph Samuel there in the midfield, and needing to get some help up there from Anthony Sumo. Somebody, the one thing that I'll say is you had Kalen Kalanji there at the top in the middle there with Anthony Sumo, but with the loss of Patrick Okonkwo, he didn't have that partner on the left hand side like he had in seasons past. So we'll see if Coach Bruno can get a replacement up there on that left side to see if he can push and they can easily win the regular season like they have done in seasons past.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that's loaded, and they a lot of these players have been playing together since they were small children, and so it's every season, no matter what the circumstances are, the Kalanji Pro Profile are right there in the mix, either vying for the division title or winning it out in the playoffs, and so they've done the championship on a number of different occasions. They won the title on a number of different occasions, and they're going to be up there again. They just have that amount of talent everywhere. Like you mentioned Sumo, you mentioned Tiente. Hopefully Playtest will be back in goal for them. You got Joseph Samuel there. I mean, it's just every spot they're just loaded, and so the big thing for them, I think we've discussed this before, is how many different competitions they're playing in. Their attention has been divided. They played in different cups and different travel to different competitions around the country. But as you said, in my conversations with Bruno Kalanji, they look to focus now on the UPSL competition this season. It's going to be a priority. So if that's true, I think you're looking at the favorite for the division, because they have the resources and the players to really compete with, if not dominate in this division. But that's a big if they do that. So we'll see. Once the season starts, if that attention still is focused on the UPSL, or if they start to lose that focus like they have in recent seasons.
And then we move on to the luckiest team in the top 14, and that's North Georgia United, a team that struggled to get points in that spring season. They say they saved themselves due to the realignment for one more season. You've had a chance to talk to the owner, Jonathan Torres up there. A lot of changes happened in the spring, like we talked about last week with the coaching change. You've also got a lot of player changes, especially, like we talked about with them losing McKeever a couple seasons back. Really didn't have a good, a solid striker there for them, but they also had Emmanuel Lom, who was the golden boot for the spring season. That's one thing that they can use to plat it, to have a little jump off point for them here in the fall is Emmanuel Lom's success. Need to see just a little bit more fire from the North Georgia United. They need to get points and they need to get them quickly because with what happened last season, I think a lot of teams are going to kind of overlook them. They're just going to say, well, this is a win. And they need to prove early in the season that they're here to play.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably one of the biggest disappointments from last season. It's a team that started out weakly, playing closely but losing, and they ended up in the bottom spot of the division. And like you say, they were saved from relegation by two teams that dropped out. And so this again, much like FC Atlanta, gives them another opportunity to make a difference. They have the ambition, but do they have the players? Do they have the resources needed to get to that next level? It remains to be seen. And unlike I mentioned Fountain City, that Fountain City doesn't have a lot of college players. I was just remarking about how some teams they come in like legends who have a lot of college players. UMA have a lot of college players that have to divide their attention between their college duty and playing in the UPSL for their club. North Georgia had that issue. They had to clean house, and now they're turning their focus away from the college players, much like Fountain City has. And so that could help them with a more consistent results with the games that they play in the fall season. So, it's up in the air, but they have a mountain to climb to make a difference in the Premier Division with the opposition that they're going to be up against in this fall season.
And like we said, they lost a couple of their key players in the spring to Georgia FC as they moved up to NISA. And unfortunately, due to their contract restraints, they weren't allowed to play in the UPSL with being that professional contract. So it really, really hampered North Georgia's spring season. So we'll see what they can do. Now we get to move on to the darlings of the Premier Division, last season's regular season champions, Potros FC. Potros and Christopher Uranga, they did a fantastic job in the spring. Like we said last week, we can't give them enough praise. Really, really impressed with what they did. However, there's been a lot of changes over the time between what was the regular season and playoffs, and now as we get ready for the fall regular season, we've got a head coach change. You also got some word about some player changes happening. Just let me know what's going on over there at Potros.
Well, I mean, they're playing the cards close to the vest in this offseason. You mentioned that the coach who won the coach of the season last season for them, he's gone, and I don't know the circumstances of the coach leaving. I don't know what they've done as far as getting another head coach in. I know that they were in Latin America for a tour in the off season, and does that put a certain type of strain on the club? I think sometimes clubs can bite off more than they can chew. And so when you've had success like Potros has had in the season that they had, it was a fantastic season, a historic season for them. But there's losing a coach or what maybe it was mutual. I don't know if it was he got a better offer or what the details are. I'm sure that we'll find out more of that in the near future. But what does that mean for getting into this next season? I mean, what kind of consistency can you have? New coach usually means new philosophy. Does it also mean new players? And they still haven't developed an academy or a second team to help with feeding that first team. So, boy, we saw Atlanta City, who won the playoffs last season, and then they fell like a stone. I don't think we'll see that with Potros, but will we see the same consistency that was a hallmark of their campaign last season? It's hard to see that.
Okay, so now my team of surprise, and not in a good way, that didn't meet expectations in the spring, and that Soccer Save Live SSL FC, they did not perform at their best in the spring season. They've been at the higher part of the table since they've been in the Premier Division, a team that is kind of an offshoot of Kalanji Pro Profile. They were basically their U23s and then became their own entity. And last season, they had some roster changes. They also had, I almost kind of feel like they had some issues with the coaching staff and administration in SSL. It just didn't seem like the team was cohesive and was working as the machine as we expected from the likes of Kalanji and SSL. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with SSL here in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, you said a mouthful there, Larry. I mean, SSL, as you said, part of the Kalanji Soccer Academy. This is a team born out of the same club as Pro Profile. So they share a lot of heritage together. But it is interesting that they are run very different. And last season, there were a lot of admin issues, a lot of standards not met. It's well known some of the problems that they did have in trying to stay up to the same level as everyone else. And again, it's a similar problem that they had with Kalanji Pro Profile. They have players that play on multiple teams. They're playing in multiple competitions. We've seen them at games where they had mismatched uniforms. And so this was a subject of much contention in the off season, to the point where if anybody had read the article at UPSL-Georgia.com about the new season, Soccer Saves Lives was not a part of the conversation for Premier for this fall. But there was a reevaluation. There was a meeting with them and the league. And there was also a complete separation. So Soccer Saves Lives now is not affiliated with KSA, with Kalanji Pro Profile at all. It is run as a separate entity. Now, having said that, they still come from the same place. And so they have been given a lifeline to play again in the Premier Division. They are returning. They weren't in the relegation spaces or anything else. Their problem would have been administration. And so through a lot of negotiation and promises made, they are going to compete again in the Premier Division. Now, what does that mean for the competition? I don't know. They were a disappointment last season, but again, much like the Pro Profile situation, they were also distracted with other things. And any discussion with the coaching staff, and also Bruno, who still is connected in association with the coaches and of Soccer Saves Lives, they are going to pretty much look at focusing on the UPSL, much like Pro Profile is going to do. So now, if they do that, then I think you have a contender for the playoffs. But if they do the same thing as they did last season and don't focus, I think they'll be flirting with relegation. That's just the ins and out of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, we're going to have to see some change, and we're going to need to see it fast, and we'll get to see it fast. Moving on to a team that I'm disappointed that I didn't get to see them enough in the spring, and that's UMAFC, because I love what Coach Andrew Joe does down there in LaGrange, Opelika. That club, I love those players. Tony Kim, one of the just premier, he is going to be a pro player sooner or later. The kid is amazing. I love some of the other guys down there. I love DJ Shin, defender, Ethan, the goalkeeper. I just a couple days ago, you saw here on the ASMG TV that I had the interview with Kevin Quintana, their goalkeeping coach, a guy that I know for a very long time. As I said in there, he was the coach of my son, who was a
Yeah.
goalkeeper. So I've spent a lot of time with him, and like he said in that interview, he was taken to how professional not only that club, the administration and the coaching is, but the players, how the players want to be there for Coach Joe and the rest of his squad. So, and that's a team, they made it to the playoffs in the spring, lost to Atlanta United Academy. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens this fall because, like you were saying just a few seconds ago, uh, as you were talking about Fountain City a little bit ago, it was UMA last fall. They were afraid because they had relied on a lot of college players, and they had to start last fall with a lot of academy players for the first few weeks and suffered defeats to Dalton United and Atlanta United Academy and Kalanchi Pro Profile. So I'm interested to see what kind of squad are we going to see in the first half of the fall season compared to the second half. I haven't had a chance to talk to Coach Joe and ask what the mentality is for UMA.
Yeah, I mean that's I'm very well impressed with Coach Joe and what he's done with UMA. And again, they are many times up against the wall because of the type of personnel they use. And you mentioned that college players. It's a gamble. It's a gamble working with college players because their availability is sketchy, depending on what's going on with the rules of playing for college as opposed to a pro development squad. And so you have a lot of players that miss large swaths of the season, especially in the fall season when the college seasons are going on. And so, but I tell you what, they've been able to work around a lot of that with their academy. And this where, squad size and squad strength comes into play, and also coaching staff. And like you mentioned, last season, they started with basically an academy team, basically a U19, a U18 type of team. And they started off with probably three of the biggest juggernauts in the Premier Division, and they held their own with that academy squad. And so that tells you the backbone at UMA is fantastic, but much like I've said with, some of the other teams like Soccer Saves Lives and Kalanji Pro Profile, what would they be like if they could focus 100% of their resources and player strength in the Premier Division? If they could do that, I think you're looking at a real contender. But as it is, I think they're going to be mid-table, not because of coaching or anything of that nature, but because of the player turnover rather, that they have. And so, maybe I'm wrong, but I just think that it's going to be a challenge for them to make magic happen. And watch, I'll be wrong and don't win the division. But yeah, so that those are my thoughts with UMA. But I do like what Coach Joe is doing down there in LaGrange, and they're sticking it out. They like you said, they gave some thoughts of maybe we should skip a season, reorganize. But Coach Joe very competitive. He wants to compete and put what he can out there to get to that next level. So we'll see what happens.
And then we finally end with Vino Tinto Atlanta, a team that got relegated last fall, was down in Division One, are instantly back in the Premier Division. Another team that's like Kalanji Pro Profile because they are loosely affiliated with FC Atlanta. A team that is going to be an interesting one to watch over the course of the season because in past seasons in the Premier Division, they suffered a little bit of uh, disciplinary issues when it came to just getting into altercations with some other squads, a little too aggressive in certain areas. They've worked that out. They've gotten, we saw a lot more of a professional team through that fall season or through the spring season when they were down in Division 1. We'll see what we get as a product here in the fall season, and it's a team that we've seen blow teams away, and then we've seen them lose significantly. So they're kind of a Jekyll and Hyde at times that we've seen them over the course of the last few seasons in the Premier Division. I'm going to be interested to see what they bring here this fall.
Yeah, Vino Tinto, one of the promoted teams, formerly in the Premier Division, was relegated one season. And as you said, they had a real problem with disciplinary issues, to the point where even before, as we found out, they were removed from other leagues because of this problem that they had. And they had that problem when they came to the Premier Division initially in the UPSL Georgia. And so, but to their credit, Orlando Lopez has put together a really solid squad. They've solved, in my opinion, all the disciplinary issues that they've had. They've matured and, won the Division One playoff that earned them the right to come back to the Premier Division for this season. So they have a clean slate right now. And, the fact that you can win a Division One playoff and get to the Premier Division tells you you have a talent pool to pull from and challenge. And so a lot of progress made, with them, a lot of progress that I didn't think was possible, quite frankly. And so I think they can be very proud of themselves of how they've snapped back and come back against adversity and competed at the highest level and climbed back into the Premier Division. Now, what will they do with that? Are they going to be a yo-yo team? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see if their talent and their resources can match up against some of the juggernauts that we see in the Georgia Premier Division.
Yeah, so that wraps up 14 teams. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Today's podcast is sponsored by Images Frozen in Time. It's simple. Images last for a lifetime, and whether you're wanting to capture that perfect shot of your wedding or of your beautiful family, maybe you need that big meeting or that conference captured for marketing material. Maybe you're an athlete that wants those memories of that game-winning goal that won the title. That's where Images Frozen in Time comes in to help you guarantee that that memory is preserved for a lifetime. Images Frozen in Time is a proud partner of the UPSL Georgia. They capture all the matches that we are at ASMG. They cannot say enough about Images Frozen in Time. So what are you waiting for? Contact Images Frozen in Time today at memories at images-fit.com. That's memories at images-fit.com. Thank you to another sponsor of the Center Circle podcast. That is the Pitch Pod. The Pitch Pod is ran by Joe Janner. He is the UPSL Academy manager for the UPSL. Great guy, has his own podcast. Really good information to get over there. So if you want to check out more information on the UPSL and what's going around in the world of U.S. soccer, check out the Pitch Pod over on YouTube. Just look up Pitch Pod 365 on YouTube. That's the Pitch Pod 365 on YouTube. All right, so 14 teams playing 13 matches this fall season for the next 14 weeks. Then the playoffs will start the first week of December. We're going to have 8 teams in the playoffs. The first seed is not going to get a bye this time like they've had in previous seasons. So that will be fun to watch. So the big change for the fall season is non-pro soccer. Now that they're defunct, we needed to bring back to life UPSL-Georgia.com. It's the unofficial site for UPSL Georgia. It's going to be ran partially by ASMG, partially by the teams themselves. The official site is still going to be premier.upsl.com, but you can talk more about what will be UPSL-Georgia.com.
Yeah, I mean, I miss non-pro soccer. I mean, the guys over there did a fantastic job for us for a few seasons. Unfortunately, they were not able to continue with the model that they had. And so they stopped rather abruptly, kind of unexpected for us. So we already had UPSL-Georgia.com, but we weren't maintaining it. But now we're going to have to maintain it. And it's a parallel site to UPSL. It's not the official site. I must stress that. But it's sort of a site, an informal site for the fans. And so we will have match reports there, images frozen in times. They do our match photography for ASMG. And of course, they'll be involved with match galleries there at each week. And so it's a place where you can go to get it's sort of a one-stop shop place for anybody that wants to go and follow maybe one of the teams and see some of the behind the scenes content that we do, some of the podcast information and live stream links. It's all going to be there at upslgeorgia.com. And so, the schedule's going up now, and so it's a good fun place where people can interact there. A little bit more informal than the UPSL website, where it's more information given, but here it's more interactive. So hopefully it'll be a fun site, not only for the fans, but also for the teams that have some control over their own pages there. So I'm looking forward to seeing that website develop and replace what non-pro was doing for us.
Yeah, so you're going to find news, you're going to find tables and standings, and follow the Golden Boot race. We'll have match reports from the matches that are done throughout the league, not just matches that are happening on ASMG TV, but we'll have match articles for matches that are ran by Potros FC or by Georgia Revolution clubs that have their own broadcasting system. You'll also be able to look at, like you said, photo galleries, live stream links, and so much more. There's more coming that we don't even have designed yet. So expect a lot coming from that over the course of throughout the season. So UPSL-Georgia.com is going to be a fun little place to keep up on everything that's happening in the UPSL Georgia conference. One of the things that you'll also find on the UPSL-Georgia is going to be the predictions from the ASMG staff, minus Andre, because of course he is the conference manager. Don't want to, separate church from state. Don't want to be biased as a conference manager.
Conflict of interest.
So from our staff, myself and people like John Reno and Jason Longshore, Danny Catula, some of the other camera operators and photographers, and you'll get their idea of who they think is going to win the division this year. So, like you said, there's going to be a lot of information on that UPSL-Georgia.com, and
Hey, and
that
I'd like to hear from the fans too. I want to see if the fans can comment on who they think is going to win the division and how they will place in the Premier Division.
definitely so. We're going to try to get more and more fans, and hopefully we can talk this fall season again to our greatest fan, Andrea from over in Italy. Hope that we hear from you in the chat as well in our matches here this fall. So that's going to do it for this episode of Center Circle Podcast. Next week, we'll talk about what happened in week one. Keep an eye on our social media so you can see what matches we're going to present here in week one. And then might have an opportunity to start talking about Division One, as their season is going to kick off here in about 2 weeks. And that is another major change, not just the Premier Division changing, but also Division One. 12 teams coming in Division One, and a lot.
Yeah, and we hope to get Patrick Roach on one of the episodes. He's the Division One manager, a colleague that works with me in the Georgia Conference, and be good to get his insight on Division One and what's going on there.
All right, that'll do it. So for Andre and for myself, Larry, thank you for watching Center Circle Podcast. We'll see you next week.